Coming up, the final season of Netflix's Spirit Rangers has been released. Its creator tells us what's in store for the end of the series. And ICT's Renata Birkenbuel explores the impact and complexities of land-grant universities for Native communities and students. Plus, two Yankton Sioux brothers tell us they find a spirit in everything and translate that to their art. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines on the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Support for the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez comes from the Arizona PBS studios in Phoenix at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Arizona State University.
Amidalahopa. Thank you for joining us. I am Aaliyah Chavez. We begin today in the Southwest, where officials from the Navajo Nation are pushing to investigate claims that women staffers of President Boo Nygren have been dealing with misconduct. According to the Navajo Times, Vice President Rochelle Montoya took to Facebook Live recently, sharing her own experience of being sexually harassed during a meeting last August. Montoya is the first Navajo woman elected vice president of her nation. Speaker Crystalline Curley has called for an independent probe into these allegations, stressing the urgency of the situation and asserting that swift action is necessary to ensure accountability. In response, President Nygren has requested guidance from the U.S. Department of Justice to oversee a fair and transparent investigation process. The Denver Art Museum is denying an Alaska Native tribe of repatriating its cultural artifacts. The museum currently holds many Tlingit items that may qualify to be returned under federal law. Delegates from the Central Council of the Tlingit and Haida Indian Tribes of Alaska want the museum to return 5 artifacts, including a 170-year-old clan house partition. Under the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, museums are required to compile their collections for Native American objects and figure out what might be subject to the law. The museum has a history of denying repatriation requests and said in a statement they're not, quote, in the business of just giving away our entire collection. Well, the Return to the Heart Foundation marked Earth Day in a special way this year by recognizing 44 amazing Indigenous women leaders with grant funding. The foundation's Traditional Helpers and Healers grant program is all about embracing traditional ways of living, all rooted in a deep connection to the earth. The funding supports recipients in revitalizing traditional ways of life through their communities with initiatives such as farming, language, medicine, ancestral knowledge, and ceremonies. We turn now to the front lines in the fight against climate change, where a prominent Native leader is taking a high-profile job. Former president of the National Congress of American Indians, Fawn Sharp, has been named to the Global Board of Directors for the Nature Conservancy. She spoke recently with ICT about the importance of Native leadership on climate.
Many of our ancestors have told of that day of reckoning when it's going to be red nations rising and our people leading the rest of the world. And we are that beacon of light, and that spiritual strength, knowledge, and wisdom that we have carried for centuries has never left us. We are right there, and we're going to lead the rest of the world through this crisis.
In 1862, the Morrill Act shifted the landscape of education and left a lasting impact on tribal communities. While it opened doors to higher education, it also brought displacement and loss of land to Indigenous people. Our education correspondent Renata Birkenbuel explores the complexities and impacts on tribal sovereignty and access to education.
Providing higher education to all, not only Indigenous students, is one provision of the 1862 Morrill Act, which authorized the federal government to buy up Indigenous lands and designate them as locations for institutions of higher learning. But Native student leaders wish their college would teach more in-depth about the significance of the land grant history.
Students definitely are far less aware than faculty are, which, in my opinion, is pretty disappointing. Like, I think that students coming to school here and paying money to be in these classes should understand those things.
Land grant institutions provide verbal and written acknowledgement that the parcels on which they sit are Indigenous lands. But college students want to see more education about land grant histories and meaning. In South Dakota, officials say the university still receives rental income on the land from the original 19th century grant.
Take that very seriously, and so we're trying to provide the benefits of higher education to all the citizens of South Dakota, including the 9% of our state that is American Indian.
And better serve Native students with new programs like the Wokini Initiative that increases enrollment, retention, and graduation rates.
So that program has been evolving, and to do that, we've used the resources that we receive annually from our land grant land. And so the benefits that we receive from the land grant land are used to benefit the heirs from whom the land was taken.
But that, say Native students, still leaves a gap in the broader student body about the underpinnings of the land grant university system.
I think there is a lot of knowledge between or among myself and our Native peers, because we're always aware that we're on Native land regardless. And so I think that we're always aware. But I think for non-Native students, it's definitely sometimes a bit of a shock.
Renata Birkenbuel, ICT News.
My name is Giselle Richards, and I'm a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation, and I support our Native men. A lot of us come from communities where violence is common, but violence, especially domestic violence, is not normal. If you or someone you love is experiencing violence, it is not your fault. If you feel unsafe, let a trusted friend know, or a loved one. If you're not sure who to talk to, there are always people ready to help. If you or someone you love needs help, there are resources ready. Call the Strong Hearts Native Helpline today at 1-844-7-NATIVE or 844-762-8483. It is a 24/7 Native helpline where you can safely speak with a Native relative. You can also visit strongheartshelpline.org to chat with a Native relative online. You are important, your life matters, and I believe in you. It takes help to heal. Reach out today.
Well, your little ones at home may be very familiar with Kody, Summer, and Eddy from Netflix's Spirit Rangers. The animated kids series debuted on Indigenous Peoples Day in 2022, and now Spirit Rangers is on its third and final season. I spoke to the show's creator, Karissa Valencia, about the first of its kind and history-making project. Karissa, this is the third and final season of Spirit Rangers. What emotions come to you when you hear that?
I just had this huge sense of accomplishment. This is a dream show that I always wished I had as a little kid. So to see it finish strong with how I pitched it 4 years ago, we finished with our finale ending in showing that the parents are also Spirit Rangers. So we're ending on this like Incredibles family moment, but with a Native twist. And that just felt so good, and that we could just keep expanding. And yeah, it's been overwhelming and amazing. I'm just so proud of our team.
Let's jump into the highlights from season 3. Tell us about them.
Something that I personally just fangirled over that I had the opportunity to do this was I got to write an episode with our former U.S. Poet Laureate Joy Harjo. We wrote an episode together, and she got to also voice the character in the episode, which was the great oak tree. So beautiful and wonderful. Oak trees are very important to California natives, and are some of the oldest trees in our state. So it was really cool to have this badass elder voice this character, and also getting to write with her was so fantastic.
You know, when I sit back and reflect on this show, one word that comes to mind is the word intentional. Everything about this series has been intentional from the day that it was released on Netflix to the names of the episodes, even to the Indigenous Writers' Room.
I love that you said that and pointed it out, just because everything we have made is has been so intentional. Like there was everybody brought their A game to this show, and I just feel so honored to be surrounded by so many people who wanted to do their best and apply everything that we could and had at this show. Even with our last season, this one we actually did not plan that it came out on an eclipse, but for some reason that just felt like the ancestors were with us and wanted a powerful end to the season.
Wow, what a coincidence. When you think back and reflect on this series, what do you think that you'll remember most?
I really love that I got to work with so many folks where this was their first shot at something, like their first TV credit, their first staff writer credit, their first artist credit. Even myself, and this is my first time show running. So I just think there was this energy that we all brought to the show that I think was so fun, but also just surrounded by so much talent and people who wanted to, tell our Indigenous stories. It's just like, looking back, I think there's also moments where like it just felt so indigenous. Like I think bringing in my Shumash community into the show was really, really special. That was something I'll never forget either. I think as a smaller tribe in California, we haven't really had the spotlight on us as much. So like it was really exciting to show off with everybody, with like Netflix, even just like our rattles and our instruments and our songs and our language. Yeah, it never gets old hearing those kids say haku, welcome to the park. I just absolutely love that.
I want to talk more about that. Because this show has such a wide reach, what have been some of the most memorable reactions?
Ooh, there's so many. I feel like it's been like I was hopeful this was just gonna be an action adventure show for kids and families. You can enjoy if you're Indigenous or not. Um, and that's been really cool to see that like little kids who are not Native get to, they have this introduction into our world and they want to be us. They see us as superheroes, as their role models. I think that is really, really powerful. I also I had one family from my tribe tell me that they gifted their sons these abalone necklaces when they were little, and they didn't want to wear them because they didn't think they were cool. And then when Spirit Rangers came out, they asked their parents for their necklaces. They were like, "Where are they? I want to wear them now. I want to play Spirit Rangers." So the fact that there's that sense of pride that's being shared with our Native youth is just like something I really wish I had when I was growing up. So it makes me very happy to hear that. And then I think another overwhelming response that I've gotten is from adults. I think like that's been really powerful to see how when adults are watching this show, they're healing their own inner child. That's kind of how I felt when I was making this show. I was healing my little inner native self and what I wanted to see. And that's just we've just all been in this together. So it's been really amazing.
Carissa, I have to ask, why didn't Spirit Rangers get renewed by Netflix for another season?
Spirit Rangers was not renewed for another season because I only pitched it up until this point. I've been really happy with where it ended, and I'm hopeful like there could be maybe there's Spirit Ranger spin-offs, maybe a Spirit Ranger movie. I'm definitely open to anything and everything, but that's a conversation we'll have to have with Netflix one day.
Carissa, I'd love to ask you, as a writer and a creative, what's next for you?
I love animation. I think the next big thing I'd love to do is like write and direct an animated feature. I feel like it's been a minute since we've had an animated feature since Pocahontas, and I would just love to replace that mantle with something else. So that's something that is definitely a goal of mine. And I also love writing like fantasy, sci-fi stuff. So anything in that realm always makes my heart sing because I love characters who feel like they're othered. Obviously, it's like my experience growing up feeling that way. I can really identify with that. So I'm really hoping to create more stories that center on Native characters and
Karissa Valencia, the creator of Spirit Rangers on Netflix, thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for all your support for all 3 seasons. It really means the world.
Our next story is about two brothers who grew up in Fort Thompson, South Dakota on the Crow Creek Reservation. Jerry Fogg and John Bayheeler are painters, but both consider themselves storytellers. Enrolled citizens of the Yankton Sioux tribe, the men are featured in this piece from our partners at SDPB, produced by Zeke Hansen.
It's about storytelling. It's about representing presenting a story. So I think we both kind of subscribe to that.
My name is Jerry Fogg.
My name is John Bayheeler.
Step into my studio. It's basically culture and tradition of my people. It's so rich that a lot of people don't realize it when they see an artist. They see a great, wonderful Native American artist and they think, oh, beautiful. But that comes from deep inside the heart and blood of us people. That we are talented, we have that talent, we are blessed with it, and we portray it and exploit it through our art. And it's an easy way of talking. You don't have to say nothing, you put it on the wall and there you're gonna listen.
And that's kind of what we do with art is we look within and look at that blank canvas and try to figure out, hey, how can I bring this picture to life? It just comes from those ancestral origins that make us a little bit different. It's more circular in nature, and in our way we say "Midakoye oyasi," which means we're all related. And so it's more nature-based and that understanding that there's a spirit in everything.
I give everyone a turn, past, present, and future. There's not too much I can do with the future right now as it's going. And the past, there's always so much plentiful of our history. History speaks through my pictures. But what goes on right now with the murdered and missing Indigenous women, our tribes, the way they're suffering, and I try to establish things that tell that part that it does exist. Boarding schools, institutions, Hiawatha.
I think every artist, at least every tribal artist, is a storyteller. When we sit down and we put a piece together, the colors are the symbology of a direction or a power, and the animals, and you try to elicit that spirit of the animal. We're painting a story. It's got a spirit unto itself. That whole process of the ceremony involved in painting. The greatest artist of us all is creator.
A lot of my pieces are basically history. First thing I think of is something from the past. And then I go to create it, and sometimes it journeys off into just a nice piece of art. Or if I sit with it good enough, it becomes a piece of history. It's basically on the storytelling aspect of it. I consider myself an artist, but I also try to consider myself as a teacher of our people's past and our history and our traditions and culture. And if I can get that across to the people, whether they purchase it or not, I feel like I have accomplished something.
It's been art that has allowed me to, recognize that something of beauty can come from within. We grew up together in central housing in Fort Thompson, and I remember just as a little guy, I'd be mesmerized by his art, just watching him as the older brother, and he'd be doing cool stuff. I mean, crazy things like Mount Dakota. But that's how it is. In Indian country, we kind of follow the lead of our older siblings.
It is Native American country, God's country, Wakantanka's country. It's a place that we look to call home. A place that we, at one time in our history made our stand, and we still stand. And, and giving that up and going to California or something, you just seem to get lost in a big city. Here you got some roots to pull.
It's huge in terms of preservation. We live in a day and age of, hey, forget about that history, and I'm not going to be that guy. We're gonna preserve through the art, through the dance, through the song. Most people are visual learners. It's the best communication tool I can think of.
When we say I'm doing art, the other one will say whoopee-la. Good going, way to go.
Chi eskalingwat. Chi eskalingwat. I'm happy-minded. I'm happy-minded. Chi eskalingwat. Chi eskalingwat. I'm happy-minded. I'm happy-minded.
Visiting with family and relatives will help us from feeling lonely or socially isolated. COVID-19 changed everything, like our ancestors who survived war, famine, and epidemics. Our elders had to make sacrifices too. The more we are socially connected with our family and community, the less health problems we will have and the longer we will live. We need to stay active to keep our spirits alive. Remember, you are not alone. Connected together, we will stand strong. For more information on elder, isolation, or caregiver resources, go to connectedindigenousElders.org.
A community housing organization might seem like unlikely partners for arts funding, but that's exactly what Duluth's American Indian Community Housing Organization has done. The McKnight Foundation has this story.
Our art carries messages about who we are as a people. It carries messages about the way that we actually see the world and interact with the world. And a lot of times it carries our prophecies and the ways that we can go forward. Anine, my name is Leanne Littlewolf. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the executive director for the American Indian Community Housing Organization, ACO. ACO is a nonprofit organization. We started in 1993 and started with a domestic violence emergency shelter, Dabanugan shelter, and now we have permanent supportive housing at the Gamaji Mino Bama Dizimin building. So with arts and culture and the work that we do, it was a natural progression because the community, our community, is really always doing arts.
Bonjour, I'm Gordon Coons. I'm a member of the Lac Courte Reservation. I do a variety of artwork. Most of my themes come from my heritage. We have a term that we could use for us called Gijibajanoman. We tell stories.
It's our cultural stories that we bring out. We want to share those with you, not only with elders, but it brings up the children to knowing that they have a path to follow, protecting and taking care of the tribe.
What I enjoy about ACO is one is they're very supportive to all levels of art. Today you'll see my work, which is like about 21 pieces. The other individual I'm shown with is Steve Standing-Called. This is his first show, so it's kind of interesting to see his new work coming out.
There's actually no word for art in Ojibwe language, you know. Art to us is in everything that we've done. It's in our ceremonial pieces, it's in our clothing, it's just part of our spirituality.
So every time the artists come and do an art show, it's a teaching. I've been to art shows here at ACO that have really expanded my thinking. I become a better human being after that experience.
It's a fun thing, and it's nice to go out there and communicate with people. And some of the works will bring new ideas that are actually old ideas that people are not aware of it. If we do historical works, you'll find out what made this country a great place, and then what made it there was what we contributed to the country as Native people.
the value of finding ways to be really visible is because we have been invisible for so long. There's this idea that we don't exist anymore, but we're still here. And I think that nationally that's been for tribal people to say, we are here, we survived.
And we just need to get out there more often, and ECO provides us a place to do that, and that's always what we're looking for, is how to get out there.
We need to really showcase our strengths, and I think that it's something that's beautiful, and I think it's something that the world can really learn from, and I think it's inspiring.
Today, my daughter's watching. She knows who she is, and she'll know where she comes from. Looking at some of this artwork, this is who she is, and I think that just by passing that along to some of our young people is pretty motivating for me to continue on.
We have a lot of people who don't grow up with traditional cultural practices. Those are the missing pieces, and we are putting those back in place. And when you have your whole self, just think of all the things that you can do.
That is a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit us at ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.